this game. So e4, c6, we have Caro-kann, knight f3, d5, we start to control the center, and d3. So black take pawn, all of the moves are correct moves. So white played knight g5. So I mean, the only good move for white is taking a pawn, and both sides will trade the queens. So knight g5 is, I think white is setting up a trap. So the thing is, if black knows how to deal that well, black can get some advantage. So for example, black has already won a pawn. But if black missed the trap, or if black fell in the trap, there will be a big problem. So how should we deal with that? So I would say we can take the pawn. There's no problem taking the pawn. And the white taking d3 pawn. So white has a bishop and a knight targeting at the king side. And also there is a queen probably moving to f3, h5, attacking f7. And these are the things it's easy for us to notice. But there is another threat which is hard to find. That is the open d file. And the d8 queen is potentially under attack. So this one is hard to find, to be honest. So if we see this position the first time as black, we have already won a pawn. And black is quicker in piece development than us. So in this case, I will look at basically all the open files or open diagonals. For example, the D file, this is only open file. And the open diagonals, for example, the bishop is aiming at this diagonal. This one is also counted, but I will say this diagonal is not as dangerous as this one, because the bishop is aiming at our king side, and at some point maybe bishop to g6, it can attack our pawn and the king. And also this diagonal is open, and maybe the dark square bishop can work in some way. And another thing we need to think about is, what are the pieces, what are the white pieces can attack us very soon. So for example, the knight is aiming at or targeting at 2 pawns, and also the knight can reach to our 6th rank just in one move. So knight could be a very dangerous piece, and also the light square bishop, as I said, it has a great diagonal to control, and also the dark square, and also the queen, it can reach f7 in 2 moves. So we need to look at these 3 pieces very carefully and calculate as many combinations as we can of some tactics. What about this knight, bishop, and these two rooks? I would say they are not as scary as these 3, so maybe we can skip this for a while. But we need to focus on these 3. So in this case, I will spend, to be specific, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to think about what is white doing here. So why is white playing a very risky move, knight g5? It didn't take the pawn back. It feels strange. There must be something weird happening here. So in this case, we play knight f6, and we play this move really quickly. It just spent 10 seconds. So I would like to highlight my point again. So in this position, we need to think deeper and think just from our opponent's perspective. And I know in a very typical Caro-kann opening, for example like this one, knight f6 is one of the book moves. So sometimes we think, okay, the position is, even though it's not exactly the same, it's pretty close. So can we just move the knight to f6 as what we did in some other positions? And the answer is no, because we need to be very cautious. So, what is the correct move? If we are aware of the, for example, this diagonal or the queen, so we can come up with some ideas to, for example, make the queen safe. Let's say queen c7. It's a simple and correct move. It's safe, and the queen is not at the a anymore. So I will ask myself, how about white attack my f7 pawn? Let's just play g6. And this triangular pawn structure is very solid. And the queen goes to f3. We can move knight to f6, for example, or knight to h6. This could be one way to defend the attack. And another approach is knight d7. This turned out to be the best move from the engine. And let's see. So, the knight is blocking the queen, so the queen is safe, and we also develop the knight. There could be something white could utilize. For example, if the bishop goes to c4, I don't worry about that. We can just play e6. We can build a pawn structure, and this pawn structure are very classic in Caro-kann. They're very solid. And if white, for example, take the h7 pawn, okay, I think I see the reason we play knight f6. We want to potentially protect h7. But in this case, white won a rook pawn back, but lost a center pawn. So that's not something I would go for. I will play knight to c5 to attack the d3 bishop. If we can exchange with the bishop, the knight is in danger, and also we don't have any threat because the light square bishop is really powerful. So yeah, and is there any other threat? Maybe queen to h5, attack our f7, but in this case we can play knight e5 instead, protect the pawn, and then later we can take the bishop with a check, or knight f6 to kick the queen away. So for example, if f4, if white want to kick our knight, we can take the bishop as a check. White has to deal with that, and later we can play knight h6 to protect the pawn. And also we are going to attack d3 with the queen or bishop. So black is better, if we can tell from the engine. Anything else from our opponent? Knight queen f3. As I said, this could be another way, but it's pretty much the same as queen h5, maybe even worse, because knight e5 not only protecting the pawn but also attacking the queen. Okay, so what about some crazy move, knight f7? We need to calculate that. Is that a threat? Can we take the knight? And so can white attack the king with the queen right here? But we can block the check. If the bishop check like this, we can play e6. If the queen go here to attack the pawn, I mean, we can play queen a5, check the king and the queen e5, making the queen in front of the pawn. Or just the queen e8, I think that also works. And later we can move the bishop to d8, d6, rook to f8, and make the king to g8. So we can castle from this way. So yes, so the thing is, I mean, mentally wise, we need to spend much more time than we usually do at this fifth move, because our opponent give up a pawn. I don't think they do that for no reason. There must be a reason behind it. There might be a trap behind it. We need to be cautious. And since we have already won a pawn, I think it's worth to spend a little more time to make us safe. So in this game we play knight f6, and unfortunately that's a mistake, because knight f7, that's a brilliant move, that's a fork. So yeah, so the thing is, if we take the knight, there is upcoming threat, bishop g6, and white can win the queen. So the best move is giving up the rook, maybe moving the queen to d5, and later hopefully we can trap the knight. And also we can take the g2 as a counter attack, but the white is better than us, as we can tell from the engine. So thinking that this game we take the knight. I think that's the same thing as knight f6. That is, we didn't spend as much time as we can. It's an 80-minute game, so we can spend much more time than 30 seconds. So we can minimize the loss at least. So bishop g6, and in this position white is way better, and it's very close to winning. So to be honest, if I would play as black, and if I play with someone who has a similar level as mine, I would probably resign. So that's the position I think white is going to win. But very interesting, I think black during this game also did really great to counter attack and win the game back. So bishop f5, developing pieces, and queen d2. So I think after winning the queen, white is a little bit getting lost. What can we do next? So we move the queen back to protect the pawn. I would say first of all, not only winning material, but also making the black king unsafe. So if I would play white, I will keep developing pieces. So that is, controlling center, developing pieces, and making the king safe. They're always the principles in opening. So even though we have won the queen, we still need to follow the principle. So queen d2, we protect the pawn. Protecting the pawn is fine, but the queen blocked our dark square bishop, right? So if I want to protect the pawn, I would rather move the queen to d1. Even though it goes back to the starting position, it doesn't block any piece development. And I was also thinking, should I really want to keep the pawn? Maybe I can just develop the knight. If we take the pawn, that's fine, take it. And because I have already won a lot of things, what I care about is developing pieces, bishop g5, and later castle. As long as we move another pieces like developed, it's very easy for us to attack the black king. And if black take the pawn, black has wasted 1 or 2 moves to develop pieces, so which makes the position even worse. So queen d2, and it's same advice for white. So we are ahead of our opponent, but it doesn't mean we can be like, it doesn't mean we don't have to be cautious. And usually the moment when we started to build up an advantage, our opponent will have the strongest counterattack. So we need to spend our time a little more than we expect. So for example, in this case, we spend 13 seconds. That's way too short in regards to a 80-minute game. So if we think about like protecting pawn or moving the queen back, as I said, comparing the choices, I think queen d2 is not the only one. We might think about queen d1 and compare these two moves and think about what is the best regarding like developing pieces, right? Okay, so queen d2, black played e6, and I think black has a very clear purpose to develop pieces and castle. That's great, make the king safe. And knight e4, yeah, that's another problem with queen d2. And when knight to e4, the knight can kick our queen. So queen to f4, we spend 28 seconds. So yeah, so I think we need to calculate from like how can we spend our time basically. I think the thing is, we need to think from opponent's perspective to think, if I move queen to f4, what would I play if I were playing as black? The rook at h2. I have Dutch bishop to be developed, and I'm done with the queen, so I need to attack my opponent as soon as possible. So bishop d6, I don't think that's a move, hard to find, to be honest. And while the queen attacking on the queen and h2, that's a disaster, because once we move the queen, bishop h2, forcing our king to h1, and there will be a discover attack afterwards. Discover attack are super annoying. We all know that, right? So if we spend our time a little more than that, I think we have plenty of choices here. So as long as I don't move the queen at this diagonal, I think queen e2 works. I mean, because we have to move our dark square bishop sooner or later, so moving the queen just to the right side, it's fine. And if the bishop to d6, we can play h3, we can play g3, and all the moves are safe. Even f4, that also works. I don't think that's a hard thing to defend. Queen da is something we can also consider, because the h8 rook is honey, but there might be some discover attack. If you don't like that, I totally understand. Or just make the queen back to d1, that also works, even though waste one move, but that's fine. So queen e4, black play bishop to d6. That's an excellent attack, and I think at this moment, I think white should still spend more time. If you look at the clock, we only spent 20 seconds. I think when we saw this move, it's not hard to see the h2 pawn is under attack. And what is coming after bishop h2? We have to make the king to h1, and black is going to make a discover attack. And this is a dark square bishop. If we want to minimize the loss, move the queen to a light square. If you move the queen to the dark square, black can make the discover attack and win the queen back, right? So yeah, I don't think that's a hard thing to find. I mean, if we move queen to f3, black take the pawn, king to h1, I mean, black is still better. I mean, black can maybe get a draw if black wants. But it cannot win the queen, right? Bishop f4, and we can move the king back. And bishop could potentially check us again, because taking the bishop is just a fair trade. And I think probably black will choose to end up as a draw. And some player might keep developing pieces to involving as many pieces as possible to attack the white king. But I would say it takes much more moves to reach the king, to the knight to the king side, or move the other rook. So spend the time, use your time. That's your resource, okay? And stay calm. So after losing the queen, to be honest, I don't think it's worth to review further, because the bar reached here. I mean, it's always good to fight until the end at this stage. But from reviewing perspective, I don't think we need to spend time to review the rest of the game. So yeah, so I think the first is that 10 moves, or yeah, maybe 10 moves or 12 moves. I think both sides can learn a lot of things from this part. And that's it.